therapy is the proactive way of looking at our mental wellness and our stress and our emotional lives.
A growing health, wellness, and leadership podcast designed for you to become your most empowered self.
Great day, amazing humans. Welcome to the Empowered in My Skin podcast, where our mission is to help 1 billion people in this world think in more empowering ways. Empowered humans empower humans. So you are the right spot to become a lead domino for empowerment today. So let the show begin. Great day, amazing humans. Yes, welcome to the next episode of Empowered in My Skin, the podcast. Our guest today is an award-winning psychotherapist, leadership coach, and consultant with over 15 years of experience helping people transform their lives. As the CEO of a successful group therapy practice, they specialize in mental health, diversity and inclusion, racial trauma, and women's issues. In addition to leading a thriving practice, our guest is also a sought-after speaker, professor, and media expert who has shared their insights on some of the toughest topics through national outlets like CBC, CTV, and more. So, I want you to get ready for what is guaranteed to be an inspiring conversation that we're going to have with someone who is truly making an impact in this world. So please join me in a gigantic, massive, big podcast welcome for Roxanne Francis, Dr. Roxanne Francis.
Oh, thank you so much. That was quite the welcome.
And that was quite a tongue twister. And because I like to keep things transparent, that was a take two. Don't lie, everybody. That was a take two. That's why we pre-record. Okay. So, Roxanne, thank you so much for saying yes. And thank you.
Of course.
I'm so excited to get you on for so many reasons. As a starting question, what has been your most empowering thought that you've had of the day so far?
Of the day so far?
Yeah.
That impossible is just a fleeting thought.
Ooh. Where did that come from?
I am embarking on some new things. And over the past few months, I have heard in my mind, oh my goodness, that feels impossible. But all of those things, the days keep marching on, and all those things that are impossible, I march through them. All the things that I for the sake of transparency, I've worked virtually as a therapist, my whole team and I, for the longest time, and we've acquired a space. And we are putting the finishing touches on this space. And I've never done that before.
Yeah.
And so it felt quite impossible. And, all the things that come with it, right? And not to say that it's easy, it was difficult, but it felt impossible. And I had that thought, but all the things that felt impossible, I keep marching through them.
Yeah.
And today I came up against something that was difficult, and I caught myself. I was about to say, oh my gosh, this feels so impossible. And I caught myself and I thought, no, that's just a thought. Right? It's challenging. It's not impossible.
I love that you're sharing this because we are in the month of September, and as part of the Empowered in My Skin, we are doing a 4-part series on the power of self-talk. And so this is actually really, really great because other than getting into your brain, brain trust on all the stuff that you're really experienced about, just want to talk a little bit, maybe have you contribute a little to this series specifically, because as somebody who is, a therapist, it's actually awesome to hear that you're By the way, I think I'm allowed to say, am I allowed to say that you've been my therapist? Yeah, I think I am allowed to say. I know Oprah's interviewed her therapist, so I'm allowed to interview my therapist. Yeah. I am guaranteed. Yes. I know Oprah has said that she's interviewed her therapist. So, but I love that you're actually sharing that, there's something that talks in your head as well.
Yeah, and I'm human too, man.
Yeah. And so how more so, in that particular case, you're like, no, no, no. You spoke to it and you said that's not necessarily true. But
Right.
what other tactics do you use to sort of get through those voices in your head that have the propensity to deter you from, sort of either feeling good about yourself or driving after your goals?
I interrogate the thought.
Ooh, we haven't had
Um,
that one.
I interrogate the thought. Hold it up against the light.
Mhm.
In the States, they would hold up the dollar bill against the light to see if it's actually real. So I hold up the thought and I ask, is that actually true? Is that a fact? Where's the evidence that this is true or not true? Right? Um, who's told me that? Who has told you that? Right? And sometimes in some cases, maybe there have been people who have spoken negative things. And so someone might have told you that. And then I ask myself, well, how valid is their opinion?
Mm.
Right? If,
Mhm.
Uncle Bob, who is not to be trusted, has told you such and such when you were a teenager, you ask yourself, do I trust Uncle Bob's opinion? Right?
Mhm.
Is that valuable? And so I ask myself these things. I've never um, you know, acquired a space before. I've never furnished a space before. I've never worked with contractors before.
Mhm.
And so when I came up against these things that seemed like somebody else should be doing this, I asked myself, well, how true is that? All the things that you've done in the past that you were new to, you asked for support, you got it done. And not only did you get it done, but you got it done well.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to follow that. I'm just going to ask for support, get advice, and proceed with confidence and get it done well.
Yeah.
Um, I remind myself that I'm not 10 years old. I'm an adult. And as the saying goes, I can do hard things.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And so I have another question. So in that particular case, there's something that you're doing and it hit up against something, and you caught it, you interrogated the thought. I love that. Interrogate.
Mm-hmm.
You arrested it. We've talked about in one of our episodes previous, arresting the thought. Now you interrogate the thought. But sometimes it's just our minds go rampant. Like you could just be
Mm-hmm.
sitting there watching TV or just chilling and like I guess so there's always some type of activity that's happening in and around us, but our mind is just reeling and reeling and reeling
Mm-hmm.
and reeling. What advice can you share? Free, y'all.
It's for free. Free game.
That we talk about like self-talk, and I don't know
Yeah.
but like is this something that you do,
Mm-hmm.
like what are some of the things that people can do in advance, like deposit, so that what the situations hit up against are also in them are things that can help them, sort of navigate whatever that situation is. Because typically, if you don't have that in you, I truly do believe it hits up against, other sort of trauma like
Yes.
experiences. So what are
Yes.
some things that you can share with our listeners that they can do that are healthy practices every single day? Yeah, to better support their interior.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure people have heard this before, but get around people who are going in the same direction as you,
Mm. Mhm.
right? Um, Listen to valuable voices, like the voices on this podcast, right?
Especially this episode.
Especially this episode. When you find yourself on social media, as many people do, if you find yourself looking at someone who's thriving in a way that makes you feel small, um, not to say that you should stay away from that person, but maybe pause on that for a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sometimes people are doing things that we want to be doing, and of course, comparison is challenge. It's a negative factor in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes we can't help but think, oh my goodness, I should be there. How come? You know, take a break from that a little bit
Mm-hmm.
and revisit it when you're in a better space.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely paying attention to the things that you read, the voices that you listen to. Affirmations are huge. Um, And journaling, I think sometimes when our mind does that reeling, right? I find that if it's up here in our heads, it can ring really loud and feel very, it feels very true to us, even though sometimes it's not true. I find when you write it down, it feels smaller. It feels like you can contain it. Journaling is a really, really great way to manage thoughts that seem to run on and on and on. It tends to contain things quite a bit.
Awesome. So now I get to ask you the question I've always wanted to ask you, but never asked because I couldn't or did, wasn't necessarily in the seat. Now I'm in the, you're in the hot seat. How did you get here? Like, how did you become a therapist? So what's the backstory?
The backstory. How long do we have? I'll try to condense it.
You got time. We want to listen.
We got time. I became a therapist, I think by accident. So I'm Jamaican. I grew up in the Caribbean. And when I was in high school, I really enjoyed the sciences. And I started university in the Caribbean and I started studying biochemistry. And halfway through that education, my mother said, we're moving. And we came to Canada. And throughout the process of trying to figure out what it would be that I would study, I took a little bit of a break from school because immigration is challenging. And, but I did find myself revisiting my home country. And you know, what I find is when you're in the middle of something, you don't really know, you don't really question it. You don't really notice all the things because it's just your day-to-day life. And so I left a country that is considered developing, came to a country that is considered developed, that has what one would call a social safety net, right? As flawed as some of these systems might be, there is a social safety net here. And there are some things that you just don't seem to see quite a lot of in Canada, in the Toronto area. And I was here for a bit and then I visited Jamaica again. And when I visited, I saw things with different eyes. I just saw some social situations that it just felt like, why does this exist? Right? Why is it that there are little children who should be in school, but they are, you know, peddling fruit on the sidewalk in the middle of the day, you know? These things just really, really bothered me. And I came back here and I could not shake it. It just arrested me in a very strong way. And so as I was trying to figure out about going back to school, I thought to myself, I don't really want to be stuck in somebody's lab. I actually want to go to school for social work. And because I thought I must be a part of some of this solution. And so I went to school for social work and I finished grad school and I needed some kind of job. And I got hired at a family agency, children and families. And I started working with mothers of little children. My clients were 0 to 6 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so most of the work was with the parents. And I had a lot of parents it was a community agency. So parents who couldn't afford therapy, who couldn't, you know, afford the fee for service. And I came to realize that those who can't afford fee for service, you find they carry quite a bit of trauma. It's a lot of intergenerational trauma. It's a lot of, and then if someone like me, if I don't get involved, then the trauma continues to the next generation, right? And so I was very much drawn to that. And so I stayed in that work and I continued to do community work. And then I left that agency and went to another one. And then they started asking me, can you see people outside of parents? Can you see people outside of children? And so I went and I got certified in couples work and I, you know, learned some other things and eventually left the agency and joined a friend as she started a practice and then left that and started my own. And here we are.
Wow, that is so exciting. And the journey of starting your own practice must, I mean, you're just talking about moving to brick and mortar, and
Yeah,
that feels impossible. But I think the other one is like even a different, I'm going to borrow your word that you use from an immigrant standpoint, but safety net, right? Like
yeah.
you were going out on your own. How was that? And what was the catalyst for that?
For going out on
Going
my
on
own
your
in
own.
terms of
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah.
The catalyst for that's another story. So the agency that I was working with at that time required every therapist to work 2 evenings a week because people who worked 9 to 5, they
Mm.
needed, evening hours. And when they hired me, they said evenings. When I started working, they told me that those evenings were until 9 o'clock. And
Mm.
at that time, I had two very young children at home. And those 2 evenings, by the time I got home, they were already picked up from daycare and they were already in
Mm.
bed. And I struggled with that a great deal because those children did not come into this world easily. And I remember, my older son, my evenings were Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so he would wake up in the morning and he would ask if it was a Tuesday or a Thursday. And if it was, he would start
Mm.
crying immediately.
Oh, wow, that's
And
heartbreaking.
because I would drop him off at daycare and I wouldn't see him until the next morning.
Yeah.
And so that was challenging. And so that was a part of the catalyst. And the other catalyst was that I enjoyed my colleagues and the clients that I saw, but the system in which we worked did not take care of the people who were doing the work very
I
well.
see.
And I was struggling, and I made it known that I was struggling in certain areas. And it was just like, well, this is the job, just do it. And I
Mm.
thought, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
no, there must be another way.
Yeah.
And so when a friend of mine said, um, she actually said to me, hey, I'm starting a practice in this city adjacent to your city. And I'm looking for someone who works with children. You work with children, right? And so I helped her for about 7 months. I went every other Saturday
Mhm.
and I saw families and children and couples. And after a while, I said to her, I think I'm ready to kind of do
Yeah.
this on my own. And
Yeah.
here we
And
are.
here we are. And you are
Yeah.
such a joy to listen to. I think,
Oh gosh.
okay, we're going to try that again. I speak only the truth on this podcast. No, honestly, well, one, just the experience I've had with you has been extraordinary. But two, just I love the ease in which you do the work that you do and why you think.
Mm.
And so my next question for you is like, what is the importance of therapy? Because I still think,
Hmm.
you know, I don't know what the percentage of is that people go to therapy, but why is it so important, and why is it work that you have continued to, um, you know, advocate the importance
Yeah.
of?
Yeah. I will liken going to therapy to going to the doctor for an illness, right? You will go to the doctor and you will say, this is aching, or this is hurting, or these are my symptoms. And they might write you a prescription, right? Um, but we don't know what the cause. If your doctor does not say, talk to me about your life. When did this start? Um, how long has it been going on? When do you feel the pain most often? If all you get is a prescription for an anti-inflammatory, then we're not really taking care of the
Mm-hmm.
situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, as a human, you want to not just reduce the pain, but figure out where it's coming from and be more proactive, right? And I think therapy is the proactive way of looking at our uh, mental wellness and
Mm.
our stress and our emotional lives. We carry stress and many of us carry, different challenges, whether it be anxiety, bipolar disorder, whatever the thing is. And it's one thing to say, try these strategies. A lot of times when people call for therapy, they say, I want strategies. I need
Oh.
strategies to manage the thing. I just want to manage it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And my concept is, let's find out where it's coming from so we can help it to really quiet down for a much longer season,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you have strategies, you're really just playing whack-a-mole, right?
Mm-hmm.
When a thing
Mm-hmm.
pops up, you hit it down,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think therapy allows you, again, I'm going to use the word interrogate. Therapy allows you to interrogate your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your history, your family
Mm-hmm.
history. What are some of the things that your parents would say about you when you were a child? What are some of the stories that you heard when you were growing up?
Mm-hmm.
These are the things that form how, the beliefs that we have about the world and about our lives, right? And so when we don't look at those things and we're only working with strategies, you're going to come right back to it.
Yes. Yeah.
And so therapy gives you an opportunity to really to look at things from with an inquisitive nature
Yeah. Yeah.
and ask, how did this get this way?
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you a fresh perspective, because if you're only looking at your life through your eyes, you're only seeing it from one angle.
That's correct. Yeah.
And so the therapist comes in, they ask you things about your life and your history and your
Mm-hmm.
family as is now, your family as it used to be. And we look at things from a different perspective. And it gives you an opportunity to say, I've never really considered that before. But those years between 10 and 14, when I had, these friends, or I was at this school, or this teacher poured into my life or said this negative thing, this really impacted how I view the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you a quick example. I'm not perfect by any means, but one of the things I can say about my life, while I do not know everything, I carry myself with a fair bit of confidence. And I can clearly say that that came from the stories that my mother told when I was a little girl. Stories about herself, about how she moved from the countryside to the city with 2 children by herself. Stories about how, when she was working, a boss tried to not pay her, and how she showed up and demanded her money. And so when you hear those things,
Mm-hmm.
you can't but think, it's possible for me too,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I carry myself with a fair bit of confidence, and I come up against difficult things, and I don't shy away from them.
Right.
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 And
Right.
and while that might be a positive thing, I think there are other things like,
Yeah.
when you grow up with some financial insecurity, you grow up with some concerns about money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so these are things that, and I'm being so vulnerable and transparent, but these are things that have shaped who I am,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so even today, as I run this practice and I have associates on my team and people that I'm responsible for and finances that I'm responsible for, I'm having to talk to myself daily
Mm-hmm.
about these numbers and about these, because the child in me will have a scarcity mindset and will say there's not enough to go around,
Mm-hmm.
or hold on to this because you never know when more is coming, that kind of stuff. And so I'm having to constantly talk to myself and call my therapist too.
The therapist has a therapist.
You better believe she does.
I was going to say, who's your fine tuner?
Yes, I do get fine tuned. Yeah.
So, I mean, what you just went through requires a level of self-awareness, which I'm assuming your therapist actually helps you start to generate. So, as in the construct of therapy, and it sounded also, I mean, how I interpret it is you're helping people get to spaces of healing. Fully healed humans. I don't know if you fully have met one.
I don't know about that. But definitely on a healing journey.
But this healing journey. So question I have is, for somebody here who maybe hasn't sort of appreciated the value of having therapy, because I do. I think, like, just as an athlete, just like you have a coach, even as a leader, having a business coach kind of help fine tune me and course correct. And that person who hears you, but doesn't necessarily drink all of your Kool-Aid.
Yes.
I think it's important. I
Yeah.
can see the value. So how does somebody know, and I don't know if I answered the question for myself, but how does somebody know when they're in this space and they could use therapy, or they could use some healing? Like, if somebody
Yes.
doesn't know what being healed feels like, how do they know
Yes.
that they have some healing work to do?
That's a good question. I think if you find that you are stumbling on the same obstacles, whether it's monthly, quarterly, once a year, if you find that you are having the same trouble in your intimate relationships, family relationships, friendship relationships, if you find that you are being, if your emotions are being activated or triggered, so to speak, um, these are things to really look into. If you find that you live in a place of dissatisfaction, whether it's with yourself or others around you, that's something to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
If your loved ones say things like, you fly off the handle so easily, or if you find that you maybe you've lost a loved one and the grief is unrelenting for years on end, that's something to pay attention to. If when it comes to mental health, I generally point to things like difficulty sleeping, changing your diet, and I mean significant change. If you would sleep easily and suddenly you can't sleep, that's something to pay attention to. Your diet, if it has changed, if you normally have a fairly healthy appetite and suddenly you're not eating anything, if things that used to bring you joy no longer do so, if you don't want to connect with your friends, if you stay indoors, if you get anxious about leaving your home, if your fears are suddenly all the time, these are things that you want to seek some support and some professional help. Yeah.
And in this day and age, with access to the internet, the talks of generative AI and all of at our fingertip information, and the fact that you can actually just kind of put in some of those symptoms that you just spoke about and get back a plethora of information. How, as a therapist, are you facing that dynamic? Because a lot of people might feel that ChatGPT can help heal them, right? Or at least
Actually, I went into ChatGPT the other day and I said something like, how to get over trauma. And ChatGPT said, this is not something that we can handle. You need a therapist. Like it listed a couple of things that you can do to take care of yourself, and it would say, there are limitations. Exactly, right? But again, to your point, this is the information age. You can go to TikTok, Instagram, Google, and find all kinds of things. But again, those are Band-Aid solutions.
Right.
You can find tips and strategies for CBT, tips and strategies for reducing anxiety, tips and strategies for managing trauma. But, you're not going to find through Google or through ChatGPT or TikTok, you're not going to find someone who is going to listen to what has happened to you over the past 10 years and do an assessment and formulate a response and say, it looks like you're dealing with
because you're listening to very generic information, even though they might be therapists online helping the general part. Yeah, it's not specific to your situation.
Yeah. It's important to the assessment and the formulation piece, and what that means for people who are not familiar, is listening to the symptoms or listening to the issues or listening to the family history, and being able to do the math in your mind and sort of connecting the dots, because people will come and they will say, something that's fairly frequent when I work with women. I am having trouble in my dating relationship. I seem to keep connecting with the same person that's no good for me, the same kind of person that's no good for me. I don't know what's wrong with me, right? Why can't I get past meeting this kind of person? And I will say, talk to me about your life. It's a question that a lot of people don't like. Tell me about your childhood. And I hear, a lot of, they don't see that this question connects to present day.
Yeah.
And so they talk to me about how they grew up in their family. They talk to me about their siblings, their place in the family, whether dad was present or not present, whether a mom dated a lot or not, whether or not there was assault, all these things. And as they're talking, I am literally weaving the pieces together and formulating a picture. It's like you're carrying all the pieces of the puzzle, but the box has been shaken out.
Right. You need somebody who can actually see it, without being attached to it. So I'm going to turn the question around now, though.
Yeah.
All of that technology, the social media and all this available to you and other therapists, how are you leveraging it in a way that, sort of supports your practice, supports how you advocate for therapy and the importance, like the actually good side of therapy? How are you now leveraging it for your benefit, for good?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, I've worked with people who cannot afford therapy. Some people can't even leave their home to physically go to a therapist's office because the anxiety is so strong, but they have their phone in their hands. And so I will share tips, right? People who can't sit down and spend the hour, can't afford to, I will share tips, right? It's one of the reasons why when the media calls and says, hey, can you come on and share about A, B, C, D, E? I say yes immediately. I share things on social media. I share things widely, things like, how to navigate a busy household, how to navigate separation and divorce if you have children, managing sandwich generation, all these pieces, mental health at work, psychological safety, all these pieces that people struggle with, but they're either maybe afraid to talk about it or they don't know, they can't find credible information.
Yes.
And so I try to put this information out there so that people can at least pick up some breadcrumbs if they can't afford the whole loaf. You know what I mean?
Right. No, and I get it. I mean, that's the premise of having this podcast. We don't pretend to be, but we're trying to put information to help you even get started. And it's great because I think what I just got from that, the Holy Spirit download on that one is, I think it also demonstrates, one of the things I always say is when I learned that my problems are not personal to me, like meaning that the things that I go through, the challenges that I come about, there was a time where I owned it. Like I was the only human on this planet that has this experience. Nobody understands. Nobody gets what I'm going through, and it's mine. And there's something very, very, that just push the wrong energy towards that problem. Yeah. And I think when I could be sitting with my girlfriends listening, or we are sharing like a Roxanne Francis tip, and all of us somehow there's a nugget in there that resonates with us. It's in
all of you.
We're not alone.
Exactly. And I think that idea of not being alone is part of the key to that healing piece, right? Not only are you sharing what's going on for you, which is a bit of unburdening and a release for you, but recognizing that you're not the only one who's carrying something like this. That the issue is not personal to you. You are not broken in intrinsically, right? Life has happened to you, and life happens to all of us in different ways.
Yeah.
And so we carry a lot of shame around what is happening to us. And I heard Brene Brown say a number of years ago that shame is like mold. It grows in the dark. And so when we shine a light on things and we recognize that we're not the only ones that are carrying the things, it makes life a little bit exactly. makes life a little bit easier.
Expose it to light and empathy. I always say my speech says expose it to light and empathy and compassion gets from it will die. You know, it
Love
will
that.
die.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So as a therapist, so you've been practicing for how long now?
Almost 16 years.
16 years. Is there something still like whether it's in your profession or it is in the intersectionality of humans, right? Because you meet a lot of different humans, different genders, different ages, this, that, and the other.
Yes.
But at the I'm going to say at the point of intersection, is there something that still, as a therapist, you're like, man, can these humans like just figure this out?
Wow. Is there something that so I have a great deal of compassion, so my mind generally doesn't go that way. It generally doesn't go that way. But I think if there is one thing, it would be this thing that the one thing that I wish people would be able to connect is that the big life situation that you're dealing with right now, it has a thread that you've been carrying for years, right? Like it connects. It really does connect. The anxiety that you're carrying, the stress that you're carrying, sometimes even the autoimmune issues that you're carrying, the I don't know, maybe I don't want to be too judgmental here, but maybe even like the multiple divorces, the
repeated patterns of
exactly all the patterns. Right. It there's a thread. There's a thread somewhere, and it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It means that life has happened to you. Right. And you've been trying to carry it for as long as you could, right? You've been hobbling with it for as long as you could, trying to make sense of it, trying to patch it all together. And you've gotten to a place where you just can't anymore, and it has just mushroomed.
Yeah. I love that, because I think for me, where that hit me was that it's never about what's happening right now.
Exactly.
And if you can get into that realization, then you can realize, okay, the moment it's not the moment in front of me. And then there's just some work that I need to not react to this moment in front of me, but rather just take a step back and try to see where is that coming from, right? Like I think if more of us can get there, even just for each other, because I think we sometimes do it to each other. Like, oh my God, tell me what happened. Yeah. Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Like, give me more information. Like, do you think that they, blah, 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 rather than what does this connect to? You know what I mean? Where do you think this goes? Did you call Roxanne yet?
And when we find the connections, we find more compassion.
Yeah.
For ourselves and for each other. Yeah. We find more compassion for sure.
Wow. Thank you for that. And
of course.
And so I also, you kind of shared a little bit about your immigrant story. I'm a fangirl of yours, and I know that you are like you were nominated for like top woman to watch, right?
Yes.
And I think it was Canada's 100 Black women. CIW.
Yes.
CIBWE or something.
CIBWE. Yes.
I just want to say top woman to watch, period. But I know that that's a very prestigious award, and would love, what how did that feel? What does it mean to you? Like, I think about Women's Executive Network, something that never leaves you. Yeah.
I was stunned, to be honest. I was stunned that someone noticed me, because it was in 2020, and I was just holding my head down, trying to do this thing, trying to serve my community. In 2020, 2019, 2020, a lot of Black people started to seek therapy, and I was just trying to serve my community. And make sense of this pandemic, and people were anxiety ridden, and I was just blindsided that that's not that it was impossible, but that someone noticed what it was that I was doing, because I don't do this work to be noticed.
So much. Yes, I get it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. It was definitely quite an honor. You know, but I say thank you gratefully, and I just keep going.
Yeah.
I just keep going. There's much work to be done. Yeah. Yeah.
And so before I get into Rapid Thrivers, as a therapist, what is your most favorite, either like when you're sought out to speak on some of these national platforms or on an interview like this, what's your favorite, like, what's the Roxanne message? Like, what is that message that you believe? And I always say there's something that you, Roxanne, are here to do that nobody can do it the way that you can do it. And Dr. Eric Thomas has this incredible video that says, find the gap. Like, you have found the gap.
Yes. Yes.
And so what's that thin? What's your gap? What's your thin?
I was listening to Selena Caesar Chavin give a talk the other day, and I walked away from that thinking about what is my purpose here on this earth. And I believe that my purpose here on this earth is to be a guide. It is to be a guide. It is to illuminate the path for other people, to show them the way, forward, to also shine a light on things in the past so that they can move forward. I believe in the power of community. I truly believe that one of the reasons that we struggle, particularly in North America or the Western so-called developed nations, is because of individuality, right? Not in the sense that you shouldn't be an individual, but this being closed off from other people. It causes you to feel like you are the only one. It causes you to not talk to other people about your struggle. It causes you to not share the wonderful thing that you've discovered. We celebrate alone, we cry alone. It's this very alone, very small way of life, and that is unhealthy. It is unhealthy, and I think that one of the best ways to heal is in community. And so I'm a light, and I help build community.
One of the best ways to heal is in community. I'm a light and I build community. Woo! That's the quote. That's the quote. That's the episode quote. So now I'm going to take you through some rapid thrivers.
Yes.
When you think of someone who empowers you, who comes first to mind and why?
So many people come to mind.
But somebody came first.
Okay.
Because you can have all the thoughts at the same time.
100%. The very first person who came to my mind is not someone who I connect with. I haven't spoken to this person in years. His name is Dr. Michael Capra.
Okay.
And before I went back to school for social work, I was working in admin at a hospital. And I was supporting him one day while his admin was away. And, I just put my head down and do my work as I usually do. And one day he saw me walking in the hall and he called me into his office. And he said, come in and close the door. And I thought, what the heck is happening now? And I sat down and I said, yes. And he said, I need to talk to you about something serious. And I was like, am I about to lose my job? And he said to me, what are you doing here? And I said, pardon? And he said, don't get me wrong. We all need admin support, and all the other admin supports are great. But many of them have started their career here and they will end their career here. This place is not for you in this capacity. What are you doing here and what is next? And I was like, wow. And he goes, yeah, you have a very sharp mind. And I need to, even if you don't know what's next now, I'm coming back to you next week. You need to tell me what's next.
Wow. Yeah, that push. I love that. Why? And this is not part of the rapid thriver, so forgive me for going back.
Yes, okay.
But because why are we so hardwired for negative?
I know.
For the negative. It happens to me all the time. My mom will say my name in a certain way. My boss will be like, do you have a few minutes to talk after work? I'm like, what did I do? Right? Like, why?
It's our survivor's mechanism. We have our as human beings, the way we survive is to protect. And so we tend to have this negative response. It's a fear-based response. It's protect, right? There's a threat. There is a potential threat, and we need to protect against it. And so we lean into that. That's just how we've been built to survive.
Can we reprogram that? Like, can I
think we can.
Okay.
I think we can, because we live in the 21st century, right?
Yeah.
And we live in a technological age, and there are many things in our lives to protect us and build in safety and so on.
Yeah.
And so it will have to happen through self-talk. We have to remind ourselves that we are safe.
I was just going to say, is that the next step? Can I now start to say, anytime that happens, I'm going to flip it and say, oh my God, they must want to see me, man.
Yes.
They must want to spend time with me.
We are safe.
I am safe, and this is going to be a fun experience.
Yes.
Okay, next rapid fire. What's a daily activity that helps you stay empowered?
Slow mornings.
Oh, do
slow mornings.
Okay.
I get up early. I go to the gym. I come home. Get the kids off to school. A few days a week, my husband leaves for work. Some days he works from home, and I go upstairs and I get my day. Like I get myself ready, but I take my time in getting myself ready. So I'm not like what I used to do was, jump out of bed with a start, I'm going to be late, and just running into the day and running into the office. And, but now I recognize that it's a privilege.
Mm-hmm.
But it certainly helps me to get my mind ready for whatever the day will bring.
Wow. And Roxanne ready is what time typically?
At 9:30.
9:30. That's nice.
I rarely take meetings before 9:30 unless it's a very special presentation or talk or media hit or whatever. On a regular basis, nothing before 9:30.
Nice. Okay, goals. What is a book that's helped you? What is a book that has helped you with your be empowered?
We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rodgers.
I think someone else has recommended that one. Yeah. I haven't read it. It's good, eh?
It's good. It's a kick in the pants for sure.
Okay. Oh, really? Oh, no one said that. I mean, I have to put that on my book list. God, that list is climbing. What is an app on your phone that keeps you empowered?
It keeps me empowered.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can think of all these productivity apps now. Empowered. My Bible app.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna have to look for you. I'm on it. You have an iPhone?
Yes.
I don't think it matters. Android. Yeah, the Bible app. Like the Bible app, like the brown one.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to look for you.
Yeah.
We could do a plan together. I love it.
Yes.
And what is one misconception that people have of you as they see you, getting these awards and on Instagram and on national TV?
That she's got it all together.
Yeah.
Some days I can't even find my shoes. I navigate this world with poise and with warmth and compassion, but I don't have it all together. I don't think any of us do. And anyone who says that is lying. But people see what we put out.
Yeah.
And we might not show our tears.
Yeah.
We might not show our fears. And so people think we don't have tears or fears.
Yeah. But we do. And we're human. And the therapist needs a therapist.
That's right. If your therapist doesn't have a therapist, get a new one.
Therapist needs a therapist. And okay, so now where do we find more of you online?
Yes, I am all over these interwebs. You can find me at www.francispsychotherapy.com. You can find me on socials at Francis Psychotherapy, and then you can just Google my name. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm all over the place.
She's all over. I will connect you. I will put everything in the show notes. And as a parting question, this podcast is called Empowered in My Skin. And would love to know what that means to you.
To be empowered in my skin means that I can navigate North America or the global North as a Black woman and walk into any space without feeling like the Black person in the room. I can just walk into any space. Yeah. Like, I think part of it is because part of it might be because I was raised in a country that's predominantly Black. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But because I have friends who were born here who walk into a space where they're the only or one of few, and they feel like they stand out. Mm. I walk into the room like my name is on the door. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm here, let's go. Right? I refuse to walk into the space from a place of deficit.
Yeah. Well, I refuse to walk into space from a place. That's the quote.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how I feel empowered in literally in my skin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. You're such a gift. You certainly have been a gift in my life. There we go.
Thank you.
There we go again. But I get it.
Thank you.
It was an expression of gratitude and grace.
Yes.
And you are making an impact on this world. And I'm really grateful for you. And I thank you for all of the ways that you have shone a light in my life. And so, yes, keep doing what you're doing. It's making a difference. Yeah.
I appreciate you. Thank you for making space for this. And thank you for having me on. I feel like I now walk amongst giants.
Yeah, I was bringing the giant on the podcast. And to everyone that's listening, we thank you for tuning in. And sadly, this is where I have to say, we're out. Bye-bye. There you have it. I trust that you're feeling more empowered in your skin. And as the late Dr. Maya Angelou says, when you get, you give, when you learn, you teach. So it would mean so much for us at EIMS if you share this episode and tag us or teach an insight that you learned from today's episode on your socials and tag us. And remember to go over onto iTunes and leave us a review or follow us on socials at Empowered in My Skin. But most importantly, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.